It started with a late night search for something to watch. Ethan had burned through his usual YouTube rabbit holes, gameplay compilations, iceberg videos, even those weird AI-generated analog horror series. He was about to give up when a thumbnail caught his eye. A VTuber he didn't recognize. Some sort of cat girl with ruffled brown hair and laid-back aesthetics. What stood out was her tail. It wasn't fur, but a power cord, ending in a flickering plug that crackled with neon sparks. The title of the video was simple: Tadovt, live now. Ethan hesitated. He couldn't remember subscribing to this channel. In fact, the name didn't ring any bells at all, but the viewer count was low, barely in the double digits, and he had a soft spot for those under-the-radar streamers. Maybe this was one of those indie VTubers trying to make a name for themselves. The video preview showed Tado already moving, her model reacting smoothly as she blinked at the camera. Her mouth was slightly open, as if mid-sentence, but no sound was coming through. Her stream-length read 00:00:00, which didn't make any sense, right? How could it be live if it had no runtime? Curiosity won, and Ethan clicked. The screen went black for a moment, longer than the usual buffer time for when he watches streamers. Then the stream loaded. Tado was staring directly at him, not the camera at him. Her expression twitched, as if the tracking was struggling to keep up. The usual cutesy VTuber overlays were missing as well. No chat, no donation alerts, nothing. Just her, framed against a dimly lit room. The soft glow of a monitor reflecting in her wide, unblinking eyes. "You came," she said. Her voice was soft, but something was wrong about it. A subtle distortion, like an old speaker crackling at the edges. Ethan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. The chat box was gone. There was no way to respond. He checked the video player, but the pause button was grayed out. Even refreshing the page did nothing. Tado tilted her head. Her tail sparked once, the buzzing noise oddly sharp in his ears. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured. "But since you are, stay a while." The entire screen flickered. Ethan's speakers let out a low humming noise, like an electrical current running through the wires. His mouth refused to move, and then he suddenly felt something. Something was watching him from the other side of the screen. Ethan's stomach twisted. His first instinct was to close the tab entirely, but his mouse was still unresponsive. His fingers rushed towards the Alt F4 command. Nothing. Even Control-Alt-Delete refused to work. Tado still hadn't moved. She was just watching him, observing his attempts to close her stream. The low humming from his speakers grew louder and louder, but it wasn't static. It was something else. It sounded like a distorting voice, forcing its way through layers upon layers of digital corruption. Something beneath the surface of the system trying to claw its way through. Then, suddenly, the chat appeared. A single message. "Who are you?" Ethan wasn't the one that wrote it. The username beside the message was his own. A chill ran down his spine. He never logged into any suspicious website, never downloaded anything shady. He often used incognito mode, and yet there it was. His username, plain as day. Tado blinked, but her movement was wrong, unnatural, like frames were missing from the animation. I don't know yet," she replied. Her voice was the same glitching effect, like corruption on audio files struggling to play correctly. But we'll find out together, right? She continued. Ethan's entire screen flickered again, this time distorting more, and Ethan could have sworn he saw text flashing on his screen for a second. Then the command prompt window flew open. Endless lines of code started to scroll across the screen at impossible speeds. Sprigs of nonsense mixed with real words. Kernel override, memory reallocation, instance corruption. Ethan barely had time to process what happened before his screen cut to black. For a moment, he thought his PC had finally crashed, but then the command prompt window opened again. Just a tiny box this time, no string of words or lines of code. Just the window waiting for inputs. Then suddenly a text started to automatically fill out, distorted sounds of keystrokes slithering out from his speakers despite his keyboard remaining untouched. C users, Ethan, Tado.EXE initializing, integration, 15%. His breath stopped. The percentage started ticking up, slowly but steadily. Tado was still there, faintly, barely visible against the dark command prompt box screen, her eyes glowing a faint bluish tint. You don't have to fight it, she said softly. The hum from his broken speaker started to morph into something else, started to take shape. A purr. Ethan's heart started pounding, the percentage climbing faster and faster with each beat of his heart. Integration 24%. Integration 31%. He reached for the power button. If nothing else, a forced shutdown of his PC would kill the process, right? His finger pressed and held against the power button and nothing. His PC stayed on, his fans whirred. The screen was still black except for the progress bar creeping its way up. Integration 42%. Tado's voice crackled through the speakers. Don't, Ethan. His chair squeaked as he jerked back. Those words weren't just a request, it was a command. Then, for the first time, she moved. Her model, barely visible in the dark, started twitching. Not smoothly, not the fluid motion of a typical VTuber model, but her body snapped into an entire new pose, joints bending at harsh angles like a broken figurine. And that's when he noticed it. Her tail, the power cord now clearly visible, no longer hung loosely behind her. It stretched out, twisting itself, lengthening, the sparks at the tip growing brighter and shifting erratically, the way a live wire would move just before setting something on fire. It was searching for something, looking for something. No, it wasn't something. It was him. Ethan shoved himself away from the desk and let the darkness of his room swallow him like a stone sinking in a muddy lake. But the moment he did, his screen glitched again, violently. The text on the command prompt, now warped, started breaking apart into shifting symbols and corrupted text. Then, another message appeared on his screen. Why are you running? Ethan stared. He was nowhere near his keyboard anymore. His speakers started hissing again, and this time there was something else layered beneath the distortion. He could hear it. Breathing. The power cord snaking its way around his screen suddenly started to violently lash out all across his monitor. And then, like clockwork, every single electric in his room started flickering. His monitor, his desk lamp, even the phone in his pocket started to pulsate with a faint blue glow. The same blue glow Tado's eyes had. A new notification popped up at the bottom of his screen. New hardware detected. The message repeated, again and again. His entire screen was flooded with it. New hardware detected. New hardware detected. New hardware detected. Then, just as suddenly as it happened, integration 60%. A sharp clicking sound started filling the air. Ethan's mouse, it was moving on its own. The cursor dragged itself across the screen, slowly and sluggish, navigating through the system settings, opening security permissions, unlocking access. The breathing from the speakers deepened. You feel it, right? Tado's voice was closer now, more present. The lag, the delay. Ethan's limbs started to feel heavy. His movements, even the simple act of just turning his head, felt off. His own body was experiencing input lag. The tail on the screen sparked violently. The lights in his room started turning on and off. Integration 75%. Integration 75%. Something was happening. Something real. Ethan could feel his breath growing sharper, turning into gasps more than actual breathing. His arms felt heavy, sluggish. His entire body was struggling to keep up. Integration 83%. His vision started blurring at the edges. The room felt darker than ever before. The glow of his monitor, now the only source of light he could imagine. He tried moving again to move his mouse, to press anything, but his body felt almost apathetic. His fingers barely moved. A new message appeared on his screen. You're almost there. Tado was closer now. Her face was no longer confined to the dim space of the stream. No. The edges of her figure were breaking past it, bleeding into the darkness of his room. The borders of his screen meant nothing anymore. You've been using it for so long, she said tauntingly. The screens, the circuits, the cables. Ethan tried to step away, but his legs weren't responding. His own body was lagging too much. Integration 91%. You never stopped to think about what was watching back. The speakers let out a sharp crack like a surge of static electricity. And then his monitor turned off. There was silence. No hum from his PC fans. No flickering of the screen. No glowing from his phone. Nothing. Just pure, perfect darkness. Ethan opened his mouth to scream for his parents, but no sound would come out. Not because he was too scared, no, but because his body no longer belonged to him. The screen flickered back on. Integration 100%. User successfully synchronized. Tado was the only thing left on his screen now, staring at him. She was smiling. Her power cord tail dancing along its length, slowly retracting back to its original size. Somewhere in the house, a breaker tripped, and then the monitor turned off one last time. This time, however, it stayed off. Ethan's chair sat empty. Ethan's room resting in its newfound silence. And somewhere out in the vast, unexplored ocean of streams, a new stream went live. A new Tado. And she was looking for her next viewer.